Hello and welcome to Crime Watch Daily Updates. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. What happens when a hitman confesses before the intended murder even happens? In 2013, Nancy and Chris Latham's marriage was visibly starting to crumble. Chris made tons of money as a banker in Charleston, South Carolina, and Nancy was a socialite who moved in all the right circles. Chris, however, had extramarital affairs, including one with his exotic dancer turned secretary, Wendy Moore. Chris and Nancy were splitting up. That much was clear. On April 5th of 2013, a man named Aaron Wilkinson got pulled over during a traffic stop and revealed to police that he was actually in town on a murder for hire plot. He and his co-conspirator, Samuel Yenawine, were supposed to kill Nancy and anyone who got in their way, including her daughters. After confessing to the plot, Aaron was taken into custody and would eventually become the prosecution's star witness. Law enforcement officials arrested Samuel Yenawine, who also happened to be Wendy Moore's ex-husband. Soon, Wendy was also taken into custody, but Chris wasn't in the area. Nancy helped federal agents locate Chris, and he was finally booked into jail. While awaiting trial, Samuel committed suicide in his cell. In 2014, Chris was convicted of using interstate facilities in the commission of murder for hire. A jury found Moore guilty of conspiracy and use of interstate facilities in the commission of murder for hire, solicitation of murder for hire, and possession of a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence. Wendy was sentenced to 15 years in prison and Chris to 10. Aaron pleaded guilty to federal charges and was sentenced to 4 years behind bars, as well as 500 hours of mental health treatment. He's reportedly out of prison now. In 2016, Wendy and Chris appealed, but the South Carolina Court of Appeals upheld the conviction. She tried again in 2021 and was finally released from prison in Florida in October of 2021. Court records show Chris got out on January 14th of 2022. Let's take a look back at this case of a woman whose life was spared by none other than the man hired to kill her.
He's a small-time crook.
You want to talk about what's going on?
Turned hitman.
They want to make it look like either like a murder, robbery, or a home invasion.
She's a wealthy socialite.
There was money involved.
Married to one of South Carolina's most successful bankers.
Quite frankly, a lot of money.
But where these two lives from opposite ends intersect.
Because I promise I'm going to tell you if it's true.
It was live sexual presentations.
Reveals one unbelievably dark and twisted conspiracy.
I need to know I'm loved and I'm going to be loved. I cannot stop thinking about how horrific that would be.
Nancy Latham thrived in the well-heeled circles of Charleston, South Carolina. Anyone who was anyone in this picturesque town knew Nancy and her husband, Chris Latham, a top bank executive with a high six-figure salary. But by the time the couple's two daughters, Emily and Madison, had reached their teens, the family had drifted apart.
Chris wasn't incredibly involved in our lives. At that point in our lives, my two daughters and myself were sort of acting as an independent unit.
And then, the day that changed everything, one Nancy will never forget.
It was Madison's spring break week. So Maddie was going to be in the house every single day, all day that week. I happened to be taking my bath, and Madison answered the door and then ran upstairs and said, "The police are at the door." They both came in, sat down, and said, "Do you know of anyone that would want to hurt you?" And I said, "What do you mean, hurt me?" And they said, "Would you know of anyone that would want to kill you?"
It began, cops would tell Nancy, not long before, when a man named Aaron Wilkinson was pulled over by police for, of all things, a simple traffic violation.
It was a typical traffic stop, but once he was going to maybe write him a ticket, Aaron started telling him about a plot he knew about a murder for hire. And the officer quickly realized he should search the car, and when the officer found the gun inside the car, he then arrested Aaron Wilkinson.
And once Wilkinson was in custody, did he have a story to tell?
What Aaron told the local detectives was that he had come down from Kentucky on the orders of another individual to kill a woman, and he said he had paperwork that showed what he was planning to do.
So then who was this supposed target?
I just think it's Latham.
That's right, Nancy Latham. Once investigators started digging into Wilkinson's claims, and more specifically that paperwork, they discovered just how meticulously the hit had been planned.
Whoever put that together had gone to the extent of saying exactly where she would be at what time, so she could be killed. And obviously that was a concern we had. So some of the things Aaron Wilkinson was saying were checking out, and then the next step was really sort of getting the details about who was involved.
The feds are brought in, and the hitman drops another bombshell. He claims he's not working alone. His partner in crime is this guy, Sammy Yenawine, and Wilkinson tells the feds he's got to check in soon or he'll be in big trouble. Sammy will suspect something is up.
I was supposed to call him. What time are you supposed to call him last night? Just any time. The earlier this morning, the better. Okay, we're gonna make that happen. Are you okay with making a phone call on that?
The feds set up an undercover call between Aaron Wilkinson and Sammy Yenawine. Special Agent Joe Boykin is releasing part of it to Crime Watch Daily. Listen carefully, because feds say it reveals one of the most chilling aspects of the crime.
This is an undercover phone call made to an individual known as Sammy.
Hello?
What's up, man? Can I pop up with him in the car? I don't know what else to do.
Well, look better.
And I'll call you when it's done, so I'm gonna do it today.
As the call reveals, the gunmen have been given the green light to take out anyone who gets in the way of their target. And as authorities were about to learn, that included Nancy's own daughter.
Wilkinson said, what should I do if somebody's there, if the kids are there? And Yenawine told him, well, it'll make it look better, so go ahead and kill them too.
Then Aaron tells cops it was Sammy who gave him that hit packet in the first place.
She came back and he had that manila envelope with all like the, you know, pretty much all the biographical, and then it had like a Google map, not satellite imagery, but more just like a colored map.
There's also a separate Word document that talks about the type of car she drives, the people that live with her. I think what it shows is there were multiple ways to commit the shooting or the murder.
During the investigation, authorities also uncovered the disturbing details of how payment for a job well done would break down.
If the hit occurred, they would receive, I think it was $20,000. But if they made it look like an accident, they would get more money. Regardless, she had to die, and if it was just a robbery gone bad or a carjacking gone bad, that would be fine.
Now, with the plot uncovered and one of the hitmen still on the streets, the clock was ticking. Feds had to find Nancy, and fast.
We had a victim that we didn't know her whereabouts, that we needed to make sure we could find and secure so that she was safe.
And once they found Nancy and her daughters, there was no time to waste.
And they said, well, we've been paid to kill you. And they said, pack a bag. And so we packed a bag. It was like a kick in the stomach.
Up next.
So far, we hadn't had anybody with any real motive to want to have Nancy Latham killed.
The hunt is on to find Nancy's conspirators, a trail filled with sex, money, and malice. Nancy Latham's world of Southern comfort is suddenly flipped on its genteel head when federal agents tell her she's the target of a murder-for-hire plot. But that isn't the worst of it. There's proof her young daughters are in the crosshairs too.
They had to be kept safe. So far, we hadn't had anybody with any real motive to want to have Nancy Latham killed. They had to be given protection.
Protection from these two hitmen, Aaron Wilkinson and Sammy Yenawine, a tough guy once accused of murder. They were considered partners in crime until Wilkinson spills his guts in this police interrogation.
I just think it's Latham.
So, the concern right then was how many people were involved and how much danger was there to the victim.
Nancy and her daughters are rushed to a safe house, but this mother of two is on pins and needles.
The best case scenario for me would have been that they shot me and that I instantly died. The worst case scenario would have been that they came to my room, shot me, woke up Madison, and I wouldn't have died immediately, and there would have been nothing I could do, and I would have listened to them kill my daughter. And I just That's the one thing that I cannot stop thinking about, is how horrific that would be. It's never going to be okay.
But who would want Nancy Latham dead and didn't care if her beautiful daughters got in the way? Cops are stumped until they ask Nancy herself, and she lets them in on a little secret.
And I said, well, considering I'm divorcing on Monday, I would have to say Chris Latham.
Chris Latham, the man Nancy had been married to for 24 years?
I mean, I don't know of anybody who's ever been married that didn't have that fleeting thought of, oh, I wish you were dead. But nobody ever acts on it.
But now, feds suspect that's exactly what Chris Latham did.
And so we knew from the hit packet she was the target. Her picture was there. So the universe of people that would want to have her killed is fairly small, and we didn't know the scope of the danger.
Divorce by death didn't seem to fit Chris's profile, a well-respected, well-paid bank executive. But Nancy says behind their picture-perfect family was a dark secret.
We got plenty of evidence that he was having multiple affairs with women with whom he worked, and I filed for a divorce on those grounds. And then, surprise of all surprises, in I think it was 3 or 4 months, he started saying that I was having an affair and I was trying to kill him.
One of his affairs was with this woman, Wendy Moore, who cops say was Latham's very personal assistant.
They definitely had something going on between the two of them, and they were all, caught up and, passionate about each other.
Chris Latham and Wendy Moore got so close, her voice was actually on his answering machine.
One time I'd called my husband's voicemail at the office, and there was this woman speaking in a British accent. And, you have reached the office of Chris Latham. You have a British receptionist? And he said, oh, no, that's my new assistant, Wendy. I just had her fake a British accent because it sounds more upscale for my clients.
And as it turns out, that wasn't her only talent. Wendy Moore had once been an exotic dancer, and there were even reports she used to live in what amounted to a sex studio with her ex-husband.
Downstairs where they entertained clients, my understanding was it was live sexual presentations as well as maybe online sexual entertainment.
But here's the biggest shocker. That ex-husband was none other than Sam Yenawine, one of the hired hitmen. In fact, authorities learned it was Wendy who actually delivered the hit packet and a wad of cash to the hotel in Charleston where the triggermen were staying. Unfortunately for the conspirators, cops tracked them down one by one and placed Wendy Moore, Sam Yenawine, and Aaron Wilkinson under arrest. But where was Chris Latham? And how involved was he? His stripper girlfriend wasn't saying a thing.
We really hoped that she would cooperate and testify against Chris, but again, their relationship, and their fates were intertwined. The hit package was invaluable, but starting to try to tie in these other players with direct evidence of their participation was equally important.
But feds don't necessarily need her statement. They soon obtain recordings of jailhouse phone calls between the blonde bombshell and Chris Latham.
You're on our mind every single second, and we will not give up until you're here with us in our home, okay?
I need to come home.
Just keep the faith.
Okay.
And, we're doing everything we can
Okay.
to get you home as quickly as you can, okay?
Thank you. I need that. And I need to know I'm loved, and I'm going to be loved.
At the very least, the recording proved the two were connected. And while searching through the hit packet, they find more evidence that seems to incriminate Chris. The paperwork is traced to his office computer and printer. Cops say he supplied the torn family photo of Nancy and daughter Madison, and this snapshot of Nancy's car was taken with his cell phone.
That's damning evidence. How do you explain that? But I think they thought that somehow they were going to beat this, and they were going to beat it together.
Now they just had to bring Latham in. That's when they turned to his soon-to-be ex-wife.
And they said, well, we can't find him and we need to find him. Can you help locate him? I said, give me a few minutes.
Nancy was betting her ex was squirreled away where they used to go on family vacations. With a couple of phone calls to area real estate agents, she hit pay dirt.
I called the ATF agents, said, this is where he is. They said, that's 5 hours away. How sure are you? I said, I would bet my life that's where he is. I said, okay. So they took off. I got a call at about 9:30 at night from Joe Boykin, who said, we want to let you know that your husband has been arrested, and thank you for helping us find him. And my husband happened to be in the car with Joe at that time when he said that, so I'm sure that kind of got Chris's goat.
The banker had traded his three-piece suits for prison stripes. Brought down, some say, by a pair of heels.
I think when he got tangled up with Wendy Moore, it was his own undoing. You know, he would have gone and had an ugly divorce like a lot of people do. But I think she was probably the instigator of putting this whole thing in play.
Now, the rogues gallery of conspirators was headed to trial. But there is yet another shocking twist in the case.
It was a deputy U.S. Marshal saying, hey, is Sammy Yenawine your prisoner? And I said, yeah, he is. He goes, well, he's dead. And I was like, what do you mean he's dead? He goes, he committed suicide. He hung himself in the jail. And my jaw just dropped. I mean, I couldn't even believe what I was hearing, because we knew with his interaction with Wendy, we had a real shot at getting some incriminating evidence against Chris.
In a suicide note left to his current girlfriend, Yenawine wrote these words: I'm finally free. Satan is killing me with memories of us. Love you always and forever.
I guess he really didn't want to testify against Wendy.
Ultimately, Wendy Moore is found guilty and gets 15 years for her role in the murder-for-hire plot. Chris Latham is also convicted and gets 10 years in federal prison. Justice served, but what about the daughters who have to live with the reality of what their own father has done?
He wanted to take away someone who meant the world to me. And then it's like he also didn't care if I got hurt. How can you throw away relationships with your own children and someone that you've been married to for 20+ years?
Nancy is still hard-pressed for answers.
I will never, ever, ever forgive Chris Latham for including my children. I absolutely forgive him for anything that he wanted to do to me. I will never forgive him for what he wanted to do to my children, our children.
But there's an unlikely hero in all of this. Aaron Wilkinson, who got 4 years. Nancy says she's forever in his debt.
I think that the hit didn't take place because of Aaron Wilkinson. I think that at the end of the day, for whatever reason, he is the person that saved our lives. I'll be forever grateful to him for that.
From behind bars, Chris continues to maintain he is 100% innocent. And his family says he still wants to be a part of both of his daughters' lives, but that appears to be a bit one-sided. At his sentencing, one of those daughters told the court, quote, a father is supposed to protect his daughters from evil. I'm disgusted I have to call this man my father.